5.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Housing. Does he stand by all his statements?
Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, no. I made a statement earlier in the year that I thought Labor was genuine about their concerns about housing affordability. This was clearly mistaken, having seen Labor's policy and their opposition to freeing up new land in Auckland.
Order. Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. How many of the 3,703 empty state houses, up 40% since January last year, are in the wrong place or the wrong size? And how many are down to his incompetence in getting the 1,290 Kiwi families in urgent need into homes?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, 1,000 of the increase in the numbers of what the member calls vacant state houses are due to earthquake risk. And let me explain. 500 of those are earthquake-prone homes, like in this city of Wellington. And I am proud that this government has said that it is unacceptable to have state housing tenants in buildings that are earthquake-prone, multi-storey buildings in this city where, having had shakes today, I think we'll be putting people at risk. A further 500 homes are those that are being repaired in Christchurch, and that is absolutely essential if we are at a rate of 1 new home per day, urgently replacing those. I would also point out that in what the member calls are vacant are hundreds of homes that have been let, but the tenants haven't yet moved in, and that is a misrepresentation. Well, doesn't the members opposite appreciate...
That's quite a sufficient answer to that question. Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Why is he content to let Housing New Zealand staff take the blame? For example, when they said recently that staff need more coaching on how to manage the vacancies process. And when will he take responsibility for the shambles created by him trying to turn Housing New Zealand into a real estate firm?
Speaker.
Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, the actual number of vacant properties that are ready to let, that is, they don't need repairs, there is not a commitment for a person to move into that property, is actually about 400. About the same number when the previous government was in office. That is 0.5% of the 70,000 state houses. I was just in Australia last week and talking to equivalent vacancy rates in New South Wales, in Queensland, in Victoria, and the performance of Housing New Zealand in terms of the management of its stock is focused around getting as many families as possible safely in those homes we own.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Why did he say that the government would be sticking to its guns on the Housing Accords legislation when just this morning Auckland Council says they can't see anything in the bill that will ensure that affordable housing is built?
Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, the legislation that we have before Parliament specifically makes reference to the Housing Accord. And if the member reads the Housing Accord, it very specifically makes mention of affordable houses. So if we want to give the Accord legal weight and we want more affordable houses in Auckland, the member opposite would vote for that legislation that enables us to achieve that goal with Mayor Len Brown.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
Does he agree with Westpac economists who said today that the Reserve Bank plan to restrict low equity mortgages will, and I quote, hobble first home buyers while helping property investors, ensuring that house prices keep marching higher? And why won't he support Labor's policy of a temporary exemption for first home buyers, the kind of thing the Prime Minister was advocating only a few weeks ago?
Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, the Reserve Bank has not yet made its decisions about its LVR approach. But I would note that the first suggestion that we should be using tools other than just putting interest rates up for financial stability was actually made by members opposite. Now, when the Reserve Bank Governor has confirmed what he will be doing, why can I assure the member opposite is that this government is absolutely committed to standing behind first home buyers. And I also would point out that the best thing for improving home ownership is low interest rates, and we've got the lowest interest rates in 50 years.
Supplementary question, Phil Twyford.
When will he and his government abandon its tired old 1980s supply-side fixation on the housing crisis, promoted by Don Brash and the other hand-picked Chicago school dinosaurs on the Productivity Commission? And when will he realise that the solution lies in the kind of balanced supply and demand approach advocated by Labor?
Order. Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I'm surprised that the member opposite refers to Murray Sherwin, to Professor Sally Davenport as dinosaurs in their recommendation that to improve housing affordability, well, they appointed them. Murray Sherwin was appointed by the opposite members to senior roles in government. Now, the fundamental point is housing supply at the core of the challenge we face about houses? Yes, it is, and we're going to build a lot more houses.
Point of order.
No, supplementary question.
Order. Point of order, Right Honourable.
No, Mr Speaker, a supplementary
I
question.
apologise. Supplementary question from the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Is the Minister aware that the USA, EU, UK, Japan and China interest rate is now 1% or lower, and that New Zealand interest rates are 5 to 6 times that? So when in the last 50 years was New Zealand ever in that situation of having interest rates 5 to 6 times higher than those 5 capital centres of the world? And why does he keep on repeating this misnomer that we have the lowest interest rates in 50 years?
Right Honourable
Mr Speaker, I've checked the records, and the last time interest rates were as low as they are now for New Zealand home buyers was in 1964, before I was born. Now, for dinosaurs like Mr Peters...
Order. The member will withdraw that comment.
Mr Speaker, I withdraw that comment, but I would note the reason New Zealand's interest rates are not as low as they are in the US and some other countries is because our economy is actually in far better shape.
Supplementary question, Speaker.
Supplementary question, Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Does the Minister not understand that interest rates are all relative? And is it not a fact that our interest rates are 5 to 6 times the following markets: USA, EU, UK, Japan, China? So that being the case, even big ears can understand that. That being the case, why does he keep on repeating that we have the lowest interest rates in 50 years?
Mr Speaker,
Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
The reason I keep repeating that New Zealand's got the lowest first home mortgage interest rates in 50 years is because they are. Because they are. And Mr Speaker, I would much rather have a growing, strong economy with joblessness coming down, with strong economic growth, than I would compared with the countries that the member mentions. Finally, Mr Speaker, in respect of interest rates, I think it is the single biggest factor that affects the costs for New Zealand families, and we should be proud they are so low. When the member was a minister last time, they were 9%.
I have a point of order from the...
You'll recall that I asked the Minister as to whether he understood the fact that interest rates are always relative.
Order. No.
Point of order.
Well, I'll give the member a bit more time.
Well, Speaker, that's the question I asked, and I'm still waiting for the answer.
No. Member may resume his seat. The member asked 2 questions. That was the first part of his question, and the second part of his question was, why did the Minister continue to repeat that New Zealand had the lowest interest rates for some period of time? And the Minister chose to devote his answer to the second question that was raised in the supplementary. Question number 6, Jonathan Young.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Energy.